Have you ever stopped to consider that the person staring back at you in the mirror might be a stranger? Not in some abstract philosophical sense, but in a deeply practical way. That the thoughts running through your mind, the preferences you claim as your own, the very personality you present to others, might not actually belong to you at all. This isn't meant to unsettle you, though it might. It's an invitation to examine something most people never question: the origins of their own identity. Where did your beliefs come from? Your fears, your ambitions? If you trace them back far enough, how many of them emerged from your own authentic being? And how many were inherited, absorbed, imposed by forces you never consciously chose? Consider this. You've been constructing yourself since birth. Every interaction, every judgment, every reward and punishment has taught you who to be. You learned which parts of yourself earned approval and which brought rejection. Slowly, methodically, you shaped yourself into someone acceptable, someone functional, someone who fits. But fitting in and being yourself are not the same thing. Carl Jung, one of the most revolutionary psychologists of the 20th century, understood something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. We're not born into ourselves. We're born into systems, families, cultures, societies that immediately begin molding us. And if we're not careful, we can reach the end of our lives without ever meeting who we truly are. Jung made a bold claim that challenges everything we assume about personal growth. He said that life doesn't really begin until you find yourself. Not until you discover, not until you achieve, not until you acquire, but until you find yourself. What does that mean? And why do so few people ever do it? The architecture of false identity. Jung wasn't interested in helping people adjust to society. Unlike many psychologists of his era who saw mental health as successful adaptation to social norms, Jung saw something darker at play: that society itself could make you sick. That conformity could hollow you out from the inside. He called the process of becoming your authentic self individuation. But before we can talk about what individuation means, we need to understand what prevents it. From your first breath, you encounter expectations. Your parents have dreams for you. Your culture has rules. Your religion, your school, your peers, all of them carry blueprints for who you should become. And because you're dependent on these systems for survival, love, and belonging, you learn to comply. This isn't malicious. It's natural. Children need structure. Societies need coherence. But something gets lost in the process. Think about a moment in your early life when you felt something deeply, maybe joy, maybe rage, maybe desire, and expressed it honestly, only to be told that what you felt was wrong, too much, inappropriate, childish. What did you do with that feeling? You didn't eliminate it. You couldn't. Instead, you pushed it down. You learned to hide it. Over time, you learned to hide it even from yourself. Jung called this the development of the persona, the mask you wear to navigate the world. The persona is necessary. It's how you function in different contexts. The professional mask, the family mask, the social mask. These aren't deceptions exactly, they're roles. But here's where the danger emerges. When you forget you're wearing a mask, when you begin to believe that the persona is you rather than something you use, when your entire sense of self becomes identified with the face you show others, you lose contact with the face you never show anyone, including yourself. The persona creates a split. On one side, there's everything you present to the world, your accomplishments, your social identity, your carefully curated personality. On the other side, there's everything you've rejected, denied, or hidden. Jung called this rejected material the shadow. The shadow contains everything you've deemed unacceptable about yourself: your jealousy, your selfishness, your fears, your forbidden desires. But it also contains your unrealized potential, your suppressed creativity, your authentic power. The shadow isn't just negative, it's simply unconscious. It's everything you haven't integrated into your conscious identity. And here's the crucial insight. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It doesn't dissolve because you pretend it's not there. Instead, it influences you from behind the scenes, shaping your behavior in ways you don't recognize. Have you ever had a completely disproportionate reaction to something trivial? Someone makes a comment and suddenly you're flooded with anger or hurt that seems far larger than the situation warrants. That's the shadow speaking. It's a part of you that feels unacknowledged, demanding recognition. Or consider the people who irritate you most intensely. The qualities in others that trigger your strongest judgments. Jung observed something remarkable. We tend to be most disturbed by traits in others that we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. The things we hate out there are often reflections of what we've banished from our own self-concept. This is projection, seeing your own shadow in other people. And it's one of the clearest signs that you haven't found yourself yet. Because finding yourself doesn't mean discovering who you think you are. It means encountering who you actually are, beneath all the defenses and denials. Most people reach adulthood with an identity that's mostly persona and suppressed shadow. They know who they're supposed to be. They've internalized the values, beliefs, and behaviors that earn approval, but they have no idea who they are beneath that construction. The path to wholeness. What lies beneath the persona and shadow? Jung's answer was revolutionary. Archetypes, universal patterns hardwired into human psychology that shape how we think, feel, and behave. Consider the stories humans have told for thousands of years. Different cultures separated by geography and time, yet their myths share striking similarities. The hero who ventures into darkness and returns transformed. The wise elder who offers guidance. The trickster who disrupts order. These aren't coincidences. They're manifestations of archetypes, living forces within your psyche, and they're not just in stories. They're in you. Think about moments when you felt called to something greater than yourself, when you faced a challenge that seemed to demand the best version of who you could be. That's the hero archetype activating within you, the part of your psyche oriented toward growth, courage, and transformation. Another crucial archetype Jung identified was the anima and animus, the contrasexual elements within each person. The anima embodies qualities like intuition, emotional depth, and receptivity. The animus embodies qualities like assertion, structure, and directed action. Every person contains both, but most people identify strongly with one set and reject the other. When these energies are integrated, when you embrace both the receptive and the assertive, the intuitive and the rational, you become psychologically whole. You stop fragmenting yourself to fit narrow definitions of who you should be. This integration is the essence of individuation. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about recovering all the parts of yourself you've abandoned along the way. But here's what makes this so difficult. The ego is terrified of this process. It experiences transformation as death. And in a sense, it is death, the death of the false self, the dissolution of the carefully constructed identity you've mistaken for who you are. This is why Jung said that individuation often begins with a crisis. Something has to break. The persona has to crack. The old identity has to become untenable. You're left with a choice. You can scramble to rebuild the old identity, to restore the persona, to push the shadow back down. Most people choose this. Or you can surrender to the process. You can allow the false self to dissolve. You can face the shadow, integrate the archetypes, and discover what remains when all the defenses fall away. What remains is the self, not as an object you possess, but as an experience of wholeness that includes and transcends the ego. This is what Jung meant when he said life begins when you find yourself. Not because you finally have all the answers, but because you stop needing them. You are the process itself, the constant unfolding. And it begins the moment you stop running from yourself and turn to face what you've been avoiding all along. Life doesn't begin when you have all the answers. It begins when you're finally brave enough to ask the real questions.